So polyfills in JavaScript is a common interview question that is asked by many interviewers. If you are under 2 years experience or more also, so it's a common question. So the questions can be something like create a polyfill of promises, create a polyfills of array, create polyfills of maybe some other functions that you are aware of. Okay. Similarly, let's start with the polyfills of array method, then we will move to other topics. Okay. So what is an array polyfill? Let's create a polyfill of for each method of array. Simple. Okay. Now, okay, so how the for each of array behaves? Okay, let's have a array. Okay. So 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. Okay. Now if I want to use for each of array, I'll just write here for each. Okay, and I'll just write it like this. So I'll just write here iterator function, right? And this iterator function is something like this, right? It's a simple function. You can write in the arrow function method also. Just write here iterator function, and then iterator function, what it does is it will get each item of the array. It might get the index, okay, and it might get the array itself completely, and it will do whatever you want to do, right? Suppose I just want to maybe add 100 to every item the array. Okay, so the iterator function will be called every time for each item of the array, and the result of this will be addition of 100 to every item. So the result will be 110, 120, 130, 140. Okay, now if I just just save it and then run it, okay, so you will see that, so 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. Simple, right? This is the a normal for each method. Now if I want to create a polyfill, that means without using for each arrays for each, you create a function which will behave like a for each of array. Okay, that is the polyfill of for each. Anything polyfill means just create a function which will replace the original function. Okay, now which means that our polyfill function will be something like this. So if I just create a name like this, polyfill for each, okay, this is my function name, polyfill for each function. Okay, so that means if I just pass the iterator function here, it should give me the same result as the for each. Okay, so now what I'll do is that I'll just comment it out so that we'll work on this now. Okay, now if you see this definition over here, this polyfill for each, it's a function call that we are just basically making a function call here, which means that there should be a function, we have to write it, right? So let's add the function. Now if a sub function is not there in an array and we have to add that particular function to that array, right? Because array.map, for each, these are all we have not created. These are not user defined function. These were created when it was introduced into the prototype of that array, right? Similarly, polyfill for each is a function which is by default not there in the prototype of an array, but we have to create it, which means that inside the prototype of the array we have to add this particular function there with the same name, right? So for that I have to just get array dot prototype. Okay, then I'll do polyfill for each, and then I'll write a function. Why I'm writing the function? Because I'm doing a function call over here na. This polyfill for each is a function call that I'm doing. Okay, that means there should be a function. So that function should remain where? That function should remain inside the prototype. Then only it will be available for us, right? So I created the function. I'm doing the function call. Simple. Now, so to this function call, what I'm passing? I'm passing a function definition. See, I'm not calling. I'm not writing here a parenthesis here, right? I'm just using the. I'm just doing a the function name. I'm just passing it. I'm not calling the function. I'm just passing the function name. I've written the function name. That means I'm just passing the function definition as a parameter, which means that this function should accept it. So I'll just write here fun over here. Okay. So this function is nothing but the iterator function. Now, so what I will write is if that function name, that check you have to do, right? Because in the for each, if you do in the array.for each, if you don't pass the iterator function, it will give that something is undefined. right? Item is undefined, callback is undefined, something is undefined will be, because if we are not passing the function, but it is it needs a function for you to pass it. And if you are not passing this particular iterator function in a for each, it will give you a error that you have not passed the function, undefined, right? Same thing we have to do over here. So I'll just tell if fun is not there, then I'll just throw an error. Okay, so I'll just throw, what I'll throw, an error. So what error I'll throw? That error that I will throw is something like this, that function is undefined. Simple. Okay, this much is done. So now what, let's go back to the iterator function. Now what this iterator function it does. So this much is completed, right? Iterator function, I'm passing the function definition here, and I'm checking the function whether the function is there or not. Okay, now what this, so now let's go to the user's point of view. Now what does the user want? The user want that for every item, for each item of the array, that means here 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, okay, I have to call this iterator function. That means this function should be called for every item of the array. It should be called, right? Then only I will receive that 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, right? That means this particular function should be called. That means we have to write something like this, right? Function should be called. Only when the function is called, then only the function will be getting executed, because that is what the user wants, that the function should get executed every time. So that means it should be called. Now the function should be executed every time, that is correct, but for each item it should get executed, right? That means here we have to get every item of the array, right? Then we will have a loop, and for inside the loop I can pass this function, I can call this function, right? So for getting each item of the array, how to get each item of the array over here? You see, who is calling this particular function? Who is calling this function? Here I am calling, right? But who is calling? This array is calling, right? Array means this particular array is calling, right? So if I just write here, so this guy is calling this function, right? Array is calling this function, which means that if I just write here log of this, if I write, okay, if I just log of this, if I write, so you will remember that if I am calling a function, who is calling the function? If I write this, that this will point to that particular object. Here in this case the array, right? Here I will be getting this will be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, so this is nothing but the array. Okay, when I log this, you will see when this function is over, and when I run it, you will see that I'll just keep this log over here. You will see that I will be getting the array itself. So whoever is calling this function, this is the function we've written. I am calling the function over here. So whoever is calling this function here, array is calling this function, because this array prototype, it will be there. So here it will get access to this particular polyfill for each function. So this guy is calling this particular function. So if I just write here this, whoever is calling this function, that will be logged over here. So here array is calling polyfill for each, so array will be logged over here. Okay, now we have the array. Now what we have to do? We have to iterate through the content of the array. Okay, and then we have to call the fun function, that is the iterator function, every time, right? That is this last step we have to do, right? So for, I just write here let I equals from 0, okay, I less than this dot length, okay, I plus plus, simple, right? Now we have to move this guy all above. Okay, so now I am calling this function, but for every time, so for each element of the array, here this refers to the array. For each element of the array, I am calling this iterator function, which is what is expected over here also. Okay, but the parameters that you have to pass is the item, the index of the item, and the total array if you want to pass. So here I have to pass the item, right? So I'll just write here this of I, right? And I'll pass here I, and if I want to pass this, I'll just pass this. Okay, so now everything is done. So let me save, and okay, so I've written here the port type, and I'm calling it above. This might not work because I have called it above. So hosting should work, but it might not work sometimes. So I just need to bring this guy here so that it will not have any problem. Okay, because I'm calling the function over here and the function definition over here, so this should work. Now when I save over here and let me do a node script.js here, so when you see the result is same. So you see console log.this that we have written over here is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, now let's explain you once again. Okay, so what we are doing, we are creating polyfill for the ForEach method of array. Okay, so ForEach method, what it does, basically it takes a iterator function for each item of the array. It will call the function and it will execute whatever you want to execute over here. Okay, which means that if I want to create a polyfill, I have to create a new function with a different name, but we have to introduce inside the prototype. Okay, so I created this polyfill for each method, which means that I have to introduce this new function inside the prototype. Okay, that is done. Now I am calling the polyfill for each over here and I'm passing a iterator function over here, which means that into this function I just need to pass the function definition. I will not call, because I'm not calling over here, so I will not call over here also. Okay, it has to be called inside. Why it needs to be called inside? Because we have to get this particular result, right? So to get this result, so if I have to get this result, I have to call this particular function, right? But this function should be called inside. So here I'm calling the function, but this function has to be called every time for each item of the array, which means that here we have to get the items of the array. Now to get the item of the array, I have to use this over here, because whoever is calling the method here, in this case array is calling the polyfill for each method, this refers to this particular array or object or whatever. So here we are using array, so it will refer to the array. Okay, so now we get the array. I'll just loop over the array and pass the each item of the array, because that is what the function definition says over here. I'm passing each item of the array, the index and the array itself. Okay, so that's the reason it is working. Okay, hope you've understood what is polyfill, how to create polyfill for each, and in the next video we'll create more polyfills. Okay, hope you like this video and let's move to the next video.